racist anymore in America, unlike what they call the good old days. So referring to a black mayor as a DEI mayor gets the point across, right? So fellas, why not just say what you mean? You can't stand black people. We get it. You've been heard.
Well, we can't stand you specifically.
Joy Reid got absolutely eviscerated by Matt Walsh. Joy Reid went on her show to espouse her bizarre and extreme views, and Matt Walsh just isn't having any part of it. It's always fun to see Joy Reid get taken down a peg, so let's watch this together and see what goes down.
Shame on those people who want to make something out of this that isn't there. They have this boogeyman philosophy, and if it's black or brown, it's something that they've got a target on. Yeah. I just think that is just totally uncalled for at a time like this.
That was Maryland Congressman Kwesi Mfume last night on this very show, talking about the rampant conspiracies being hawked by the right about Tuesday's tragic bridge collapse in Baltimore. It has been a grab bag of right-wing grievances, barely coded racism, and flat-out lies. Noted Jewish space lasers and QAnon conspiracist Marjorie Taylor Greene suggested the disaster was the result of an intentional attack, perhaps by the space lasers.
Well, actually, she didn't suggest that it was an intentional attack, and even if she did, that's not a conspiracy theory. Intentional attacks on infrastructure are a well-known threat. There's nothing outlandish about suggesting that it may have happened, but she's not even suggesting. The tweet that Joy briefly flashes on the screen says, quote, "There should be a serious investigation into the horrifying tragedy of the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Maryland. Is this an intentional attack or an accident? Praying for the victims, survivors, and families." Now, which part of that tweet is conspiratorial or outlandish? In fact, I can't imagine a more measured and normal way to respond in a situation like this. Is Joy Reid suggesting that it's inappropriate to even wonder whether the incident was intentional? Well, that's odd because the people investigating the crash also wondered about that. Now, so far, they're saying that they don't think that it was intentional, but that's obviously an angle they pursued immediately because it's a normal thing to wonder about. So are they conspiracy theorists too? Joy doesn't say. Let's continue.
But the most idiotic and racist theories had to do with their newest boogeyman, diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI. A Republican congressional candidate in Florida tweeted that DEI did this. And a right-wing blue check account that's been boosted by Elon Musk in the past just blew straight past the dog whistling, tweeting to its 276,000 followers, quote, "Baltimore's DEI mayor commenting on the collapsed Francis Scott Key Bridge. It's going to get so much worse. Prepare accordingly." The post included a clip of Baltimore's black mayor, Brandon Scott. I cannot believe I have to say this. Brandon Scott was elected with 70% of the vote in 2020 in a city that is 61% black. So by right-wing logic, a diversity hire would have been a white man, which of course is what they want. Only the white Christian men may have the things. And at this point, it's evident what they mean by DEI, right? Okay, it means black people. It's the reason the right complained about critical race theory. It's not fashionable to be openly racist anymore in America, unlike what they call the good old days. So referring to a black mayor as a DEI mayor gets the point across, right? So fellas, why not just say what you mean? You can't stand black people. We get it. You've been heard.
These race hustlers like Joy Reid always have to say these type of buzzwords and these type of just insane things. Everything is racism. Everything is terrible. The thing is, DEI in itself is racism. It might be positive racism because you're now favoring minorities instead of discriminating against them, but you are still using discrimination to hire certain people of certain races. You're just no longer discriminating against minorities. You're discriminating in favor of minorities. And people like Joy Reid love it. They're all about it because, as she likes to point out, oh, racism in the past. Oh, you know, America used to be so racist. Therefore, we need DEI. However, when the right or people who are against DEI and wokeism like Matt Walsh here calls it out, all of a sudden it's racism, it's terrible, you can't say that. Only we could say it. Only we could talk about DEI. Only we could just say it's a great thing. But when you say it's a bad thing, well, that's racism. It is all racism. That's the whole problem with DEI.
Well, we can't stand you specifically, but you're an individual person. You're not an entire race. Now, a few points here. Number one, it is fashionable to be openly racist in this country, just not against black people. But Joy Reid herself proves, and what comes next in this very segment that we're watching will again demonstrate, that racism against white people is indeed very fashionable. And second, she's showing us tweets to prove whatever point she's trying to make. And as we've seen, the first tweet that she displayed from Marjorie Taylor Greene totally contradicted her point. She wants to demonstrate that conservatives in the main are being wildly conspiratorial about this. So she showed us a tweet where Marjorie Taylor Greene was completely measured and utterly reasonable. And next we see a tweet from some congressional candidate I've never heard of. And then we see one from an anonymous account called I am yes, you are no, with a cartoon profile photo. You know, that guy, that world famous conservative thinker named I am yes, you are no. You know, $20 barely gets you anything these days. You can't get a burger and fries for less than that.
All right.
But
you know, I'm just going to use this time instead of supporting a huge company like Daily Wire. Why don't you support a small YouTuber like me? Subscribe to my channel. You'll be helping me out a lot. Let's get back to this.
Every Baltimore mayor for the past 30 years, except one, has been black. They've also all been terrible, by the way, as the city has plunged into decades of crime, violence, and rampant drug use. But that's a topic for another day. But she is right that, you know, the joking nickname given to this guy by an anonymous cartoon Twitter account is not technically accurate. Now, as to the suggestion that DEI might have something to do with the bridge collapse itself, that may also not be accurate. We still don't know. We may never know for sure. There are many factors that played into this incident, factors that are still being investigated. And at this point, it's just not possible to say for sure whether or not DEI policies played a part somewhere along the line. But if people immediately speculate about the role of DEI in incidents like this, it's not because those people are so terrible, it's because DEI is so terrible. The fact remains that DEI policies have deliberately and systematically lowered standards across the board in virtually every industry, all in the name of making every industry less white. That is a fact. It has happened. It is happening. Joy Reid supports and promotes those policies. And now we are witnessing the collapse of competence across the country because of it. Now, that doesn't mean that every catastrophe is linked to this campaign of destruction in the name of diversity, but it does mean that it's perfectly reasonable to wonder whether any particular catastrophe is linked to it. And it also means that, inevitably, some people will draw that connection even before it has been factually established. That's what happens when you come up with a racist policy that intentionally makes everything worse in every conceivable way. So the problem here is the policy, not the random Twitter accounts that Joy Reid is crying about. But it wasn't enough to have Joy Reid cry about them on her own. She also brought the mayor of Baltimore on the air to respond to all of this. Now, you would think that the man who is the mayor of Baltimore has a crisis to attend to and would be too busy to spend time doing an interview to respond to a joking tweet from an anonymous Twitter account. That's what you would think. That's what you would like to hope. But
I mean, well, yeah, anything to deflect from the actual issue, which is the DEI policy, which they all champion. People like Joy Reid and this mayor right here that she's about to talk to, they all champion these DEI policies. And so, yeah, if this is because an unqualified person or people were in charge of this bridge, well, then, yeah, I mean, you got to call the attention away from this. You can't even have people talking about it. No. We must concentrate on those evil racists online.
You would be wrong. Watch.
You don't really know when you're doing this because your adrenaline's going. You're trying not to say anything stupid. You don't actually know how it's going, really.
Well, I think, listen, I know.
Wait, this is the mayor? This is the mayor? Why is he dressed like just some dude off the street? What the? Did I mishear something? Matt Walsh did say that Joy Reid was going to talk to the mayor, right? What is this? Why is he dressed like they just picked some random guy off the street to have an interview with Joy Reid?
And we all know, and you know very well.
Yeah, Mayor Brandon Scott. Holy cow!
The boogeyman for those who are racist and think that only straight, wealthy white men should have a say in anything. We've been the boogeyman from them since the first day they brought us to this country. And what they mean by DEI, in my opinion, is duly elected incumbent. We know what they want to say, but they don't have the courage to say the N-word. And the fact that I don't believe in their untruthful and wrong ideology, and I am very proud of my heritage and who I am and where I come from, scares them, because me being at my position means that their way of thinking, their way of life of being comfortable and suffering, and while everyone else suffers, is going to be at risk, and they should be afraid, because that's my purpose in life.
Okay, I'm going to skip right past the mayor's statement that it requires courage to say the N-word. Something tells me that if any white person did say it in his presence, he would have a lot of things to say in response, and praising them for their courage would not be one of those things. But we don't have time to harp on that, because the bigger headline here is this part. He says, quote, "Me being in this position means that their way of thinking, their way of life, of being comfortable while everyone else suffers, is at risk. And they should be afraid, because that's my purpose in life." So just to recap the situation, the mayor of Baltimore, in the midst of a major disaster, has taken the time to go on a political talk show to play the victim because someone tweeted something mean about him. And then, in the middle of this little pageant, he proceeds to issue a threat and even declares that it is his purpose. His purpose is to put at risk the livelihood of these people he's threatening. Now, you might hope that, again, his primary purpose right now, you would hope, is to figure out what to do about the fact that a bridge that carried 30,000 commuters a day is now lying at the bottom of the Patapsco River. But apparently not. Apparently that's not his purpose. And who is the they that he's talking about here? Who's the they? Is it that one guy? Is it the one guy with the cartoon profile? Is that who you talk? Is that what this is all about? Is that guy? But you said they. I don't think he identifies as non-binary, so he must be talking about more than one person. He says that their way of life is at risk, and they should be afraid. Now, I suppose the most charitable interpretation is that he's talking about people that he deems racist. Even that would be disturbing. An elected official, a mayor in particular, should not be threatening anyone for having thoughts he disagrees with. That's what we're talking about here. Much less should he be declaring that they should be afraid, that he intends to put their way of life at risk. But
you know, that's absolutely correct. I mean, like, they always talk about how Donald Trump has hateful rhetoric. He's always, he's spreading hatred against certain types of people, and he doesn't represent everybody. But have you ever seen or heard Donald Trump talk this way about any of the American citizens that he wants to represent? Has Donald Trump ever talked that way about any of it? Has Donald Trump ever talked that way about any of the American citizens, even if they're the ones that don't like him? Has he ever been like, oh, I want to make them afraid and they should be afraid, their way of life is at risk? He has never said that. Meanwhile, you have the mayor of Baltimore, who represents a diverse group of people, or at least he's supposed to be, saying this about his constituents, about the city he's supposed to represent here. It's insane, and yet no one's going to come down on him. He's not going to be chastised for it. He's not going to be pushed as a race baiter or a hate mongerer or a fear mongerer. None of that. He could say this and no one will bat an eye. Joy Reid will sit there and nod her head at him and agree with everything that the mayor of Baltimore is saying. And Joy Reid will continue to push this. But none of these people, these race baiters and people on the left and Democrats in general, will ever be held like accountable the same way that people on the right or Donald Trump have. And Matt Walsh's assessment is completely right here. Do you guys agree with Matt Walsh? Or do you think Joy Reid and the mayor of Baltimore is correct? Leave a comment in the comment section below. Give this video a like. Subscribe to my channel. You'll be helping me out a lot. And I'll see you guys later.